I'd like to talk about the last chapter in your book and just understand it a little bit more and how it can really help these teachers. So let's look at vision and career planning first of all. So you really emphasise the importance of exploring a vision and having a vision. Why do you think it's so important to have a clear vision?
Yeah, I think one of the best things my mentor did, along with all the other amazing things, is that she asked me, like, what do I want to do in 5 or 10 years' time? And I hadn't really given it much thought until that mentor meeting. And I thought, yeah, actually, I want to be like you, because she is such an incredible role model. She was the personal lead mentor in my school, and she was my mentor, and I felt really honoured. And when she asked me that question, I said, in the old days, it used to be an advanced skills teacher. So I was like, oh, I want to be an advanced skills teacher. I want to be, within 10 years, I want to have crafted, been really strategic about the way in which I built my own kind of self in the classroom. I was really determined to be the best teacher possible and then try and support other people to kind of develop their own and enhance their own practice, just like she had done. And I think when she asked me that question in my first year of teaching, I don't know how many other people who would have asked me that. And that really determined my career path. So when I said out loud, almost like manifested, I said out loud, I want to be like you. I would love to be an advanced skill teacher. I want, within 10 years, not 5 years, I talk about a 5-year plan, but within 10 years, I see myself as an advanced skills teacher. And I remember her sitting there doing a bit of research with me and saying, well, advanced skills teacher is kind of on its way out. There's a new thing called lead practitioner. Let's think about how we get you there. And we then backwards planned. And I think that kind of thinking about the future and thinking about imagining myself in 10 years and what I'd be doing, lead practitioner, supporting others, training new teachers, being like my amazing mentor, and then working backwards, okay, what would I need to do to get that to that point? And I think that sense of credibility, like how do I build myself as a credible leader and a credible teacher? And to be a credible leader, I think that you have to also be a great teacher, know what effective teaching looks like in the classroom, and be able to kind of live and breathe it. So that's why I emphasize it so much in the book, because I think we leave it too late for early career teachers. We just think, oh, because we're trying to help them survive, let's just focus on their classroom practice and that's it. But actually, I think it's quite motivating to think, okay, in 5 years' time, I'd like to be a head of English. I would like to be a head of year, or I'd like to be a lead practitioner, whatever it is that you want to do, and say, well, how do I get there? Rather than thinking, in 3 years' time, then somebody says to them, okay, now it's your appraisal. Let's talk about what's next for you. And actually, they've not done any of the work to help them get there. No, they haven't enhanced their practice enough to even think about those things. And also for leaders to see them in that way. Whereas if you're working backwards and you're saying, right, in 5 years' time, I want to be head of year. Okay, what do I need to do in the next 5 years? I need to be the best, form tutor. I need to really know how to be an effective form tutor, but also build rapport with my students. And then maybe I need to think about how I maybe go out of my own classroom and work with other people and help them do that. And I think that's why I emphasize on that so much, is that where that aspirational sense of leadership for our new teachers, so that they see themselves in the career for longer than just 2 years, which is what I think we sometimes do.
Yeah. So what if somebody is uncertain about their next steps, or they're kind of at a crossroads, how would you give them advice about refining their vision?
So in coaching, we use a term called future pacing. We use strategic future pacing. So you literally imagine that you're in that present tense. So it is, July 2025, and I am a lead practitioner in English, or whatever it is. And you actually use future pacing to be really specific. So almost set yourself a SMART target, imagining you're there. So it's quite living in the present moment and thinking about what that would look like. So it is, July 2025, I'm a lead practitioner in English, and, I am supporting early career teachers by delivering teacher training. And then you're very specific in that. I think sometimes our vision can be, I just want to be a lead practitioner. I just want to be an assistant head teacher. But no real clarity about what that looks like. Which specific element, like what's your expertise? Is it teaching learning? Is it pedagogy? Is it, is it pastoral? What is it? And then helping yourself think, or thinking backwards and thinking, right, what do I actually need to do? What are the 3 things I need to do within the next 3 years that's going to help me get there, or next 5 years that's going to help me get there? And so actually asking yourselves almost like coaching questions to help you. And that's what I would do, and I do with new teacher is, or anybody who's kind of thinking about their next steps, really, is like, imagine yourself there. Now, what are the 3 things that you've done? Maybe you've done an MPQ. Maybe you've spoken to your mentor and said, this is what I'd like to do. Can you tell me who are the people who are the expert within this organization who I can shadow, for example? And then going away and doing it, and then giving yourself somebody, like I said earlier with my own book, who's going to hold you to account for those things. And I think this is where coaching is so powerful. There's so much out there of coaching, paid, unpaid, free as well, but where coaches can really help you, support you do that. So in your early career, you have a mentor, you have somebody who's with you for 2 years, and then you're just left on your own. And actually what I advocate for is coaching for every single member of staff. Everyone gets a coach. And I don't mean instructional coaching, which is teaching and learning based, but actually a non-directed, pure kind of coach who just helps you determine where you want to go, and helps you think about the future and helps you come up with actions to help you get to that goal.
Yeah, and that leads us really nicely onto, in your book, you're also talking about creating action plans. So you talk about how to outline and create an action plan to achieve those goals. What are the key components of those effective action plans?
I think it has to be very specific. I mean, this is where I think a SMART goal is really great, because it has to be specific to what you're thinking about. So being kind of quite broad can be quite harmful, I think, sometimes, just saying, I just want to be an assistant head teacher, but there's no clarity of values even behind that. So actually really thinking about, what are your values? Who are you? What do you stand for? What are you most passionate about? So for example, I'm obsessed with teaching and learning. I love it. It's what I'm passionate about, and I think I'm quite good at it. And I've done that because in the last 15 years, that's what I've focused on, is honing my practice, is going out and doing, the research, is working and going to lots of conferences to learn more. And I think that's what's really important when you're thinking about that, is, are you being really specific? What values underpin that kind of specific goal that you have? And what are the things that you are going to do to get you there? What's 3 things that you're going to do to get you there? Is it that you need to attend lots more conferences? Do you need to, get a coach? Do you need to build your internal networks or get on social media and kind of share stuff first? And I think that's what I did when I knew that I wanted to be a lead prac. I only discovered X maybe 5 years within my career, but by that point I'd already known that what I wanted to do. So I just used to be really shy on X, and I just scroll and like things. But then I started sharing my own resources. And once I did that, people were really, oh, thanks for being so generous. In the old days, it was tests, TES.
Yeah.
So I used to start sharing on tests, and then it became social media.
Yes.
And that has literally led me to doing things like this, going to Lit Drive and sharing my, Lit Drive is the English kind of subject specialist conference, but organisation, and doing those things. So thinking about those 3 things that you are going to do, and who's going to hold you to account for those things.
So talking about your building those external networks, how do you make sure that those relationships that you're building are more than just transactional relationships?
That's a really good question. I think the people I've met on social media have become my friends, and that's really strange to say. So even Chiltern Learning Trust, for example, Sufyan, I only ever knew from social media, and that's now built, because we've interacted so much and kept that kind of consistent interaction. It's built into this, I guess, being able to work with the Chiltern Learning Trust. And I think it has to be consistent, and particularly when it can feel quite transactional. You give something to somebody, or you share something on social media, and they say thank you. And for a people pleaser like me, it's great for my ego. But actually, it has to be beyond that, because you have to give things as well.
Yeah.
You can't just take, I think.
Yes.
There has to be a mutual kind of respect there, like there would be if you're working in a school. You wouldn't just be like, okay, I'm going to take lots of your things, Becky. Thanks for sharing all your schemes of learning. I should then share things with you, and sharing that generously, I think, is really important. And, I know for me, that generosity of sharing is powerful for the system. It impacts everybody. If I share something on Socratic debate, for example, yes, it's just one little thing for me, but for lots of other people, they've now used that. That's impacted the young people in their classroom. And it's thinking openly like that, I think, that it's not just I'm taking or I'm giving, it's a mutual kind of respect and building those relationships and interacting often. And I know for lots of people that's quite exhausting. And I would say dip in and out if you need to.
Yes.
Because sometimes social media can be quite overwhelming as well, and being kind to yourself.
And I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier with social media. For someone who's new to leadership or just new to teaching, where do you start with social media? Because there are so many platforms and so many different... Where would you suggest people start?
It's so hard, because I started on X, and I know that's quite controversial at the moment. But and I've stayed on X for the main reason of trying to, I know I can't change the system, but I want to be a differing and alternative voice, so that it's not just the same old voices. on that platform, and sharing generously is one of the key things that I would suggest. But I think X has been really powerful just for me and my career. LinkedIn is great as well. It's very professional. It's very kind, I would say. And also, obviously, you can upload your CV and things like that, so people can see what you're doing or what you've done. And I've actually been able to be signposted to jobs, for example, through LinkedIn. So I think it is based on who you are and what you like. And I'm on TikTok now. I don't know how I've got there, but I found TikTok really helpful in some ways of like sharing strategies in quite an authentic way, because it's just me and my voice with some of my slides. I think it just depends on who you are. And I would say within those networks, wherever you are, liaise with, associate yourself with organisations like Chiltern, Women Ed, Chartered College of Teaching, which are professional organisations that are looking to change the system or to support the system. And by starting there and engaging with those organisations, you'll find connections who are similar to you. But what I think can be a problem within social media is that you then surround yourself, you've got an echo chamber of people who are saying the same thing as you and validating what you've got to say. Whereas actually I like following people who are maybe controversial, who are different to me, because otherwise then I'm just validating my own opinions and what I think is correct, when actually that's not the way the world works.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think the role of networking within teaching and education has really changed then over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media has given people who would never have access to those networks, access to those networks. I know, I talk about this a lot. I grew up in Tower Hamlets. There's just not that network for people and there's not a lot of people who look like me who are in leadership positions in Tower Hamlets, which is surprising because it's quite a diverse borough. And so social media gave me a platform and gives lots of people, from diverse background with protected characteristics, a platform that they would never usually have, and access to a network, and then to grow their own network. And I said this before, those networks have given me jobs. I've got a job from being on social media. The freelance consultancy work I've done, I promoted my work through social media. And I think it's finding those kind of networks that are going to help you and support you, but also who you can help and support and contribute to as well. I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry.
No, you did. We're going to move on to writing a personal statement now, though, because you talk about that in this chapter. So writing a personal statement is really difficult. But what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make, and what should they avoid?
Yeah, I think there is this is advice that was given to me by Hannah Wilson, is that when you're writing a personal statement, we tend to focus on all of our successes and not focus on how we contribute to that organisation. How is it that our skill set is going to contribute to the organisation? And this is where your research is so important. Maybe you've noticed through your reading and your research that the school improvement plan literally says that they want to increase the number of kind of grade 9s, for example, grade 7 to 9s that students are achieving. How are you with your skill set going to contribute to that? So I think there's a mistake that we tend to make, is just focus on, I've just got to tell them everything about myself and what I'm great at. And that's amazing. But actually what you want to say is then, okay, now how do I then use those skills as somebody who's a lead practitioner in English to then improve the kind of contribute to the vision and the values or the outcomes of what you as a school, your organisation wants to do. Because that's when they start imagining you within their organisation. Because otherwise you're just that person who's in that previous school. And the other thing is really knowing the organisation that you're applying to. Put in quotes of their values, like be really specific and say, I know that, and your value is this, and this is how I really embody this value, and this is why I'd be really great, because I'm aligning myself, I'm already aligned to your vision and values, and this is what I'll do to embody the values of the organisation. And I think those two things around like really thinking about how you're going to contribute to the school and the organisation and the school improvement plan, but also then how you are going to align yourself and how you already align yourself with the vision and values of that organisation. Yeah,
so in Thrive, you kind of talk about it almost like it's a narrative or a story that you're telling, aren't you? So why is that approach so impactful, do you think?
I mean, stories are so important, aren't they? As English teachers, I think we'd always agree, but stories and narratives really stick in people's minds. So if you're telling them the story of your career, but by linking it with, this is how I'm going to contribute to your school, this is what I'm going to do in the school, you're letting them imagine you in that organisation, within that leadership team, within that role. Whereas otherwise you're just focusing on the past, you're just talking about, these are all the things that make me great. that's not what they want. They want to know, what are you going to do to contribute to the school improvement plan? How are you going to benefit our school, our community? And a lot of my personal statements tend to be around that, is how do I, as a person, as an individual, how will I contribute to that school community and creating that sense of belonging, so those young people, see themselves, in these aspirational roles, one thing, and also academically, how am I going to support those young people to thrive?
So if you're going for a new role, a leadership role, and you haven't had experience of that role before, how do you showcase your potential in your personal statement?
I think there's a bit of work that needs to be done before you even write that, which is to do some of that work. And actually go and maybe do a bit of shadowing. I'd hope that somebody who wants to be, say, for head of department, for example, might have been a second in charge, or would have done things like creating schemes of learning that they then shared with the team. So that's doing that, a little bit of that work already. So as somebody who's on an interview panel, I might be looking for those things. Like, how have they already started going? People use the term above and beyond, I guess. But I think that's what, you want to show them that you're already doing that role in some elements, that you're already that inspirational head of department, and this is going to be an opportunity for you to really develop into that role. So I think there's a bit of work that needs to be done before that personal statement to give you a bit of almost like work experience. And sometimes it is frustrating because you are going to be doing work that maybe is unpaid labour, but you're doing that because you're building your CV, you're building your career, but you're also building your expertise to then bring that to the personal statement and say, oh yeah, I've worked with my head of department already, and I know that schemes of learning, creating assessment, sharing, so you've already showcasing the interviewer that you've got knowledge of what that job entails, because middle leadership, particularly jobs, are, I think, one of the most challenging jobs in the school. And because you're in between, you're the staff that you serve and you're supporting within your team, but then you're accountable to leadership, and then you're in the middle, like trying to do lots of different things. And it's how can I showcase that I can develop the team that I'm working with, but also become, I'm a leader in my own right.
Yeah. So what advice do you think, if you could give a top tip to somebody who's got a bit of self-doubt, or we talked about it earlier, but imposter syndrome, what tip would you give to somebody who's worrying about that?
I think, for me, knowledge is power. And as an English teacher, read. If you're worried, if you see that there's a gap in your kind of strength or your skill set, read about it. There's lots of books out there. There's so many fantastic leadership books out there. And one of my favorites is Andy Buck's Leadership Matters, because so the reason I say that is because that's difficult conversations was something that I always hated them. I always found them really problematic and just really challenging as a people pleaser. So by reading about what that might look like, I then went and read, and I thought, okay, he gives you a structure in the book, and then I just tried it, and rehearsed it and implemented it. So I think knowledge is really powerful here. You don't know it yet.
Yes.
You don't know it, fine, but you don't know it yet. Go and read about it. Go and see somebody doing it in action. There's lots of people within the organisation who'll be doing that job already. Get yourself a mentor, and this is where mentoring is really important. Go and get somebody yourself connected to somebody who's doing that job already, who can then give you advice about what you might need.
Yeah. So that leads us nicely on to, you talk in that final chapter about thriving in those new leadership roles. And there are, I guess, lots of different challenges that you might face in a new leadership role. Apart from obviously wider reading, which is fabulous, what other bits of advice could you give to a new leader about how they might overcome some of the new challenges?
So there's so many strategies I share in the book, but one of my favourite things to do for myself, because the inner critic can be really raging and really loud in those moments and makes you think like you're not good enough and that you can't do it. And I think I always create a table of, what do I know? And what does that, how am I feeling? And then what do I know? What does the evidence or data tell me? So I might be feeling like I'm not good enough to do this job. I'm not qualified. I'm not competent. Whatever it is, write it down. Write it down, because then you're going to see it for yourself. Sometimes those feelings are just within our head. And by saying it out loud or reading it, you're actually, oh God, it's right there in front of me. And then on the opposite side, I write down, what do I know? And what is the data telling me? Well, I've got this job because I've been a second in charge, and I got, really great outcomes, and my head of department, advocated for me, and actually writing that down for yourself. So you're almost like countering that narrative within ourselves. And particularly for women, I think that imposter syndrome can be really strong and make us really believe that we're not good enough. I think a bit of research that Google did was that, men, for example, will look at a job specification, a personal specification, and hit maybe like 20-30% of that and go, yeah, great, I'm going to apply for that. And women will have to hit 100% of that criteria before they think they're good enough to apply for that job.
Wow.
And Google did that bit of research, and I just find that so interesting. Because what's the difference? I mean, so much of, I think, society has told us that perhaps we just should be doing other things, that women's place isn't in leadership. And so countering that narrative is really important, has been important for me, and I think will be one bit of advice that I'd give.
Absolutely. So how are you going to, if you're a new leader, how are you going to thrive and not just survive?
Yeah, absolutely. I say keep a journal, write down all the amazing things that you're doing, do it on a weekly basis, maybe on a Saturday, Sunday, write down everything you're doing, but also just write down the mistakes. Like, just be honest and transparent with yourself in that journal and say, okay, do you know what, I made that mistake, I should have probably said this, or I could have tried this, and write it down so that next time you're learning. And be kind to yourself. Like, be really kind. Leadership is really hard. Some people make it look easy, but it's not. Everyone is struggling with imposter syndrome. Get yourself a coach.
Yes.
Get yourself a mentor, get yourself a coach. Mentor probably is your line manager, somebody who's probably done that job already. Ask them, be honest, and don't be embarrassed to say, I've never done that before. I've never done an exam review paper. Can you teach me how to do that? And then your coach will help you with kind of navigating some of those problems in a non-judgmental way, because they're not. Usually, I would advise that coaches are not within your kind of department or organisation, and they're perhaps beyond that, because then there's that non-judgmental, non-hierarchical perspective as well.
So if you were going to give someone some advice and just say, take one small step today in your journey to be thriving, what would that one step they should take and they do right after they've watched this video?
I love it. Go and speak to your line manager and be honest with them and tell them what's the one thing that you are anxious about, what are you worried about, and ask them what they would do, and ask them for advice. And I think people love it when you say, can I ask for a bit of advice? Because they want to help. Leaders want to help as well. So don't be embarrassed or ashamed to go and ask for help. But yeah, speak to your line manager, tell them what one thing that you're struggling with or you're anxious about, and ask them for advice about how they could handle it and how they could support you.
Do you think doing all of this and writing this book and your kind of slight change in career now, has it changed your understanding of leadership and growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for so long I thought leadership wasn't for me. For so long I didn't see anybody that looked like me, and I never saw myself. I mean, I'm 4'11", so I literally was like, I'm too tiny. I mean, even those kind of, that mentality, I'm too tiny to be kind of a strong leader, and actually kind of reframing that for myself through coaching, through writing the book and doing this kind of new kind of job has really helped me realise that leadership doesn't look like one thing. There's so many ways to be a leader. And for me, kind of leading with empathy and values is at the heart of my leadership. And knowing who I am and the kind of leader I want to be and aspire to be is really important. And I talked earlier about, Yamina Bibi is probably my aspirational role model. She's one of the youngest head teachers in the country when she started. But once up until that point, I'd never seen a hijabi Bengali woman as a head teacher, ever. And when I saw her, all of a sudden something clicked within me. And I was like, oh, maybe I could be a head teacher one day. And now I would say quite openly, I'm an aspiring, not now, but like eventually, maybe 10 years' time, I'm an aspiring head teacher. And I never would have said that about myself. And I think writing the book, having these networks, and kind of through coaching, I've been able to see that within myself as well.
Yeah. So finally, how does Thrive differ from other leadership books that are out there, and what does it offer the reader that others don't or might not?
I think you have to do that bit of research anyway for the book when you're proposing something. And one of the things that I found is there was just nothing practical for ECT. So there's lots of great books out there, but did it really focus on the nitty-gritty of when you start teaching? Or that first chapter is all about early career school. Like, who's a Senko? How do I find that out? What's the kind of things that I need to free up in my working memory that take over so much of my time? And that's what this book offers. It offers really kind of specific, practical advice on lots of different things that an early career teacher will face within their first few years of teaching, but also then helps them look beyond and helps them see themselves in the profession long term, which is why that final chapter is all about, your vision for your career. Because I want those teachers to stay in teaching and have an impact and be the next generation of leaders, essentially.
Oh, thank you. And then next time we meet, we're going to talk about another chapter in your book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.